there, and welcome to the Fearless Artist Podcast, where we empower classical musicians to build their own thriving careers. I'm your host, Lynne, and together with Deanna Petre, we teach artists to conquer the entrepreneurial side of their careers and create the futures they want. We are two freelance classical musicians who have lived and worked in Europe for a decade, and together we started the Fearless Artist Mastermind, a coaching company created to teach classical musicians how to overcome fear and take action on building their dream careers. In each episode, we will explore the intersection of artistry and entrepreneurship, teaching you the fearless mindset with practical steps and strategies to build a sustainable career. Get ready to build your own artistic brand, find a supportive community of musicians so that you don't have to figure out everything alone, and earn a living that you deserve. We believe that you can be a thriving artist and not a starving one, and we are redefining what it means to be a classical musician in the modern era. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fearless Artist Podcast. I am your host, Lynne, and today I'm super happy to have David Taylor on. David, welcome.
It is great to be here. Thank you.
Nice to see you again. We just met for the first time in Berlin at the Classical Next conference. You are an arts innovator, you're a coach, you're a consultant, you work with organizations to help bring innovation, entrepreneurship. I'm excited to talk to you today and to dive in.
Definitely. There's so much we could talk about, so it'll be great to see where this ends up.
Yeah, I'm curious too. So first thing, I would love to see, could you just maybe give us a short intro? I know that did you tell me you're a recovering cellist or former cellist or something?
You got the wording spot on. I'm a recovering cellist.
Okay, great. Well, there you go. It's a good branding tagline to introduce yourself with.
Definitely. So that's my route into this strange world. I studied at music college. I was a cellist for a short period of time. Probably to everyone's happiness, I'm no longer a cellist, particularly audiences. But yes, so I now do a mixture of coaching and consulting, both with musicians and arts organizations, usually around marketing, digital, careers, social media, and audiences, which is quite a sort of a catch-all. But in essence, it's trying to help people and organizations in the classical music world thrive in the modern age, which is a cheesy way of putting it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I know you've done some really cool stuff. I mean, the BBC said you're an arts innovator. I'd love to hear more about that. Forbes 30 under 30. That's always a great accolade. I'm way past that. I can never get that again. It's really sad.
I got straight in bang on 30, if that makes you feel any better. I was very lucky.
That's awesome. So I'd love to hear what kind of organizations you work with. What's the change that you like to make, and what's the big message behind what's driving you?
Really good question. So organizations, that's the easy one. They are usually based in the UK or Europe or United States. That's ranging from people like New World Symphony in Miami, currently working with the St. Louis Symphony in Missouri, Royal Scottish National Orchestra, the Philharmonia, Orchestra Age of Enlightenment, and also then going and speaking at conferences. So was at a conference in Norway recently, also attending things like Classical Next and sharing ideas and things there. When it comes to sort of the big message that I try and share, particularly with organizations, it's that the status quo isn't sustainable and that we're trying to replicate a 20th century model in a 21st century world. And that change is something that's needed, but also change is something that is not expensive either. Particularly in digital, we keep fretting about the cost of all of this and it's expensive and what is the possible return on investment. And actually, to thrive on social media, you don't need a big, giant, fancy television studio. In fact, the organizations that have the most resources tend not to be ones who are finding the solutions to their problems. So actually, there's a real positive outlook there, and also that we are living in a world of potential, and that even though it is scary, this is actually a really exciting time to be working in the arts. The thing that we have is of great interest and value to people. It's not that we're trying to sell spoons or something incredibly boring. People are desperate for what we want. Classical music continues to be one of the fastest growing genres on streaming platforms, almost in spite of the work that we're doing. And so we are, in essence, in a really lucky scenario. So we have this opportunity, we have tools that are cheaper than ever to use, and we have potential to hopefully expand and connect. So that's probably the main one. And then the same for musicians, that there's great opportunity, but equally, on the musician side, a huge amount of empathy, because we've been almost trained and conditioned into a way of thinking that means we're not able to navigate this world as much. So it's about breaking those boundaries and hopefully finding paths to finding success for individuals.
That's so great. I mean, there's so many ways that we can go in this direction. First of all, like, how did you get into this? I mean, you just speak with so much passion, enthusiasm, obviously a lot of motivation. I'm sure you're coming into these organizations and you're firing everybody up, talking about possibilities, talking about how we can create change. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. There's a strategy that you're presenting. Like, where did this come from for you? What was your first jump into this?
Yeah, so I basically started by not knowing what I was doing. So after music college, I went and taught the cello at a music academy in the Middle East, and then came back to the UK not really knowing what I was going to do. But I saw the experience my students had out there, which was incredible, and also my contemporaries at music college from National Youth Orchestra of Scotland or National Youth Orchestra of Wales and places who had this incredible uh, sort of sense of community, but also opportunities available to them. And I grew up in somewhere called Yorkshire, which is where I still live. It's in a population of around 5.5 million, but it doesn't have the same sort of cultural identity within an organisation or an orchestra in the same way as a youth orchestra for an area. So I thought in my spare time, maybe a couple of hours at a weekend, side project, side hustle, I will create a residential youth orchestra course that happens once a year. It'd be dead easy. How hard can it be to start a non-profit? Short answer, hard. And so basically it was this was age 26, no experience of working in an organisation properly, let alone running one, and Googling my way through. And it turned out within the region, there's Yorkshire's famous for being quite a stubborn region, and everyone kind of falls out with themselves here. And so the local stakeholders, they didn't want to collaborate in the way that I was expecting, which was sort of from our national plan for music education, which I was expecting. And so I was in this situation where I was unable to connect with students and musicians, their parents, or even their teachers. And so came this idea of experimentation and trying to find new ways of doing things. And so bizarrely, from being utterly naive, that actually became almost a superpower in that I would go off and find a way of doing things that would happen in other industries and not be trying to replicate how an organisation would do it within our classical music world. Basically, we ran for 4 years over, and we did 4 courses with a concert each year, so 4 concerts. We reached about 7.5 million people in that time through a mixture of press coverage, media, social media, all these different things. And also we were the first youth orchestra to use iPads instead of sheet music in the world. We had digital concert program apps, and this is way back in 2017, I think it was, for implementing those. And also then we were doing things like parity within the orchestra, so players were swapping around in between pieces, let alone in between sessions. And working with soloists like Ray Chen, Stephen Huff, Esther Abrami, all these incredible people. So it was a wild ride.
That's huge. I mean, that sounds like a multi-step process that you just described to get from like just to say, oh, like a nonprofit once a year kind of thing. I wanted to say when you were mentioning using other industries, that's what I really like about in your book, because you're talking a lot about examples from the real world in other industries and how we can bring those examples into the music industry. When you're saying things like, using Netflix as examples, or like other people have figured this out, we can just look at the same models, bring that into the music industry. What were some of the biggest effects you saw from, it was the YYS, right? The Yorkshire Youth Symphonia?
That's always the thing as well, like the worst name imaginable. So it's Yorkshire Young Symphonia, and I've heard every permutation of the name ever, which one was potentially regret, but equally it never seemed to have a negative effect. So that was potentially a learning thing going backwards. So yes, that was the name of the orchestra, and I think that level of curiosity of seeing what happened elsewhere was certainly interesting. And what I realised is from having no idea what I was doing, we had all this success. And I was then looking at the industry and becoming frustrated that they weren't getting the success despite having all the money, resources, PR, marketing teams, etc. So what has my unorthodox approach learned that can help support those?
So what was working for you? Like what was this? It was the digital approach.
A mixture of digital approach, but also in a bizarre way, traditional press as well. We're very good at getting traditional press. And one thing I found was almost trying to identify the story really early on of what would be of interest to people, not what we think is of interest to us. And I particularly think when we do, this is a slight tangent, but into press releases, it's always what we're desperate to say and not like what is actually a good story that people might want to know. And also, to be blunt, kind of adapting my product around what would get coverage. So I mentioned the digital sheet music. There was an opportunity to pair with this sheet music app called Music with an N, who are based in France. And there was so much innovation there. It was a much better experience for the students. They got to be involved in giving feedback. The project itself is great, But honestly, like they were given the pitch meeting and I started writing the press release because I was like, I reckon I can get eyeballs on this because it's clickbaity. Kind of like a blunt way of putting it. But in essence, the project was done because it would get us more coverage, which would get us more students, which would get us more potential money and that sort of thing. So the
Yeah.
project was almost reverse engineered around how could this get us to an audience.
But that's just being strategic, right? Like you're just thinking what's interesting for a wider audience. I think one of the hangups that I hear from people who don't want to market the music is the argument is, well, Beethoven should be enough just to sell on its own because it's so worthy. So it's interesting to hear more about how you weren't touching the music per se. You were talking about the packaging. Is that accurate?
Yeah, certainly. And like there was some things like the sheet music were more, this is something that will cut through. So we got on, if you're watching the video of this, it's, oh, I've taken it down. I've just changed around my room. So I used to have a frame, like it was the third page of a national newspaper. We got coverage and on BBC News and on Sky News. We're not going to do that for Youth Orchestra plays Beethoven. But this was an opportunity to get more eyeballs around it. On the music side, you can do, but that wasn't how music was marketed at the time. That was so why would we try and replicate how Mozart or people were marketing themselves as well? Or we should be doing that. Sorry, that they weren't doing. Here's a new piece. It was around the experience and models and those things. And I think the world has changed. There's so much competition for time now. So we have to compete with Netflix, football, books, computer games, wine tasting, all these other things that weren't necessarily in our faces in the way they were before. So we have to really make sure we can identify what the value proposition is early and demonstrate that rather than just say, would you like some music?
Right. So when these organizations, and you name some really huge names, I mean, it's super cool. You get to work with these big orchestras. What is one of the first things that first of all, what are they bringing you in for? And are you giving them what they think they're bringing you in for? Or are you like, actually, this is what you need, you know?
Good question. So I've started with a model that's usually a very light touch at the beginning to kind of address the point you just mentioned, which is, am I going to come in and do what they want in essence? And that's sometimes what the original conversation isn't actually what the organization needs. So that's why I usually start with a very smaller light evaluation to try and just sort of lift the hood, see what's kind of the possibilities that are available, but also the challenges that they face. I'm yet to find two organizations that work the same way. So that really helps with identifying what could be a solution for an organization because the same answer doesn't apply everywhere. And then from there is either a mixture of creating strategies for them to go forward, staff training. In some circumstances, I've got my hands dirty. So I did a long project with Leeds International Piano Competition a couple of years ago. So I was in-house for 9 months. And that was creating the content, leading a huge digital transformation of the organization. So it's quite varied on that side. And organizations, sometimes it's like one person who has marketing as an element of their role through to here's an entire marketing team.
Can you jump in a little bit to the Leeds piano competition? Because I know when we chatted in Berlin, you showed me like the case study and there was some really cool stuff in there. I'd love to just share that a bit.
Definitely. So the big fancy stats from there is that across all their social media channels before, they were, I think, around 4,000 video views per month. Fast forwards to 6 months' time, this escalated to 1.5 million video views per month, and this was with zero advertising spend. The journey of going through there was, in essence, identifying content that they could use that they had already recorded because they were once every 3 years, this competition, so there isn't really a vast amount happening you can post about in that time. So
we're which is super pertinent for people listening because they're always saying to me, oh, I don't have any concerts coming up. What can I post about? And you're saying, like, digging into the archives, you went from 4,000 to 1.5 million views. So
yes, and with that as well, some of it was repackaging what was there. So it wasn't purely, here's a performance and walking away and hoping that the music speaks for itself. We had a series where it was the scrolling sheet music, which you may have seen on social media, where the music sort of flies by as the music's playing. And that was repackaging the content into shorter clips to be able to do this, but also in a way that is going to grab people's attention. It is a great knowledge equalizer. So if you don't know anything about music, you see things moving and passing a line. So anyone can do that. They've played Guitar Hero or they know the concept. But also if you are a full nerd who wants to do Schenkerian analysis, you can also get like value from it as well. So that was a great equalizer as well as driving our engagement. And then we were able to do longer performances as well. And then really leaning into what could be of interest and of value to the audience. It's when I do presentations on this, I joke that our sort of innovative, groundbreaking strategy was we made some content that people would like, and then we just did it over and over again for a long period of time. which is
Yeah.
groundbreaking, but also it's actually hard. And
I mean, it's funny, but like that's what we learned from Gary Vee and Alex Hormozi's and everybody saying like find what works and then double down on it. Like find what your audience is interested in. And so you're saying like old footage, you're bringing awareness to the festival in the in-betweens of having the competition itself. What were some of the other things that you were bringing to the organization?
Yeah, so part of it was also then looking forward to the broadcast of the competition itself. Previously, they're broadcast on Medici TV and also BBC Radio 3, and there's a highlights program on the BBC itself. One of the things we identified is that they were constantly giving away their audience to third parties and not retaining it for themselves. Their social media following was quite small, and in essence, everything they did would be almost to benefit Medici TV. So what we decided to do was bring streaming to be both on the Leeds International Piano Competition website, but also on Medici TV. We created an entire media hub there for the streaming and broadcast. And what we found through there, it was, that was also hosted on YouTube, but embedded in the website in a more of a Netflix style platform. And I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but in essence, I think we got about double the number of viewers of Medici. So around, I think it was 100,000 live viewers for the final, around 50 or 60,000 on Medici. So all of a sudden, actually bring it in-house as a big benefit. And then also from there, you retain that relationship with your audience. So going forward, they can keep in contact, they can push fundraising, they can promote applications and things. So there's lots of then good stories and reasons as to the power of owning your audience and also not having to rely on Medici.
Right. So it sounds like you, like, to summarize very briefly, like it was visualize, got the visibility up of the organization, huge numbers. And then you found a way to retain them so that you can keep talking to them, right? So when we're talking to our freelance musicians, we're talking like the social media strategy that we really try to hone in on. It's not just about the views because we don't need millions. And you mentioned this in your book too. You don't need gazillions of likes. You don't need gazillions of followers. You just need your core following. And then can you talk to them and nurture them? Actually, do you want to walk us through the 3-step process that you were describing in the book? I thought it was so great about how to take your audience, nurture them, and then sell. Because you were saying people ask for money straight off the bat, and that's kind of a turnoff for people.
Yes, definitely. This is a very good test. I've not actually looked at the part 1 of the book for quite a while, so I can't really remember those full 3 steps. But I imagine it would be something lines of generated.
Well, they were saying that the orchestra started charging immediately to watch a concert, like $5.99 first off the bat was the idea, and that we're like asking for money immediately from people.
Oh, that bit, yes. So in essence, it would be generate attention by providing something of value that people want to watch. Then from there, continuing to build relationships by demonstrating you can provide value for a long period of time. And then provide products or services that are still of interest and value to them once you've done that at a further later date. So initially trying to say, here's the thing, do you want it, yes or no, is a really hard sell in the digital world. You have to really sort of buy and build relationships. For me, as an example, I think it's in the book as well. There was a photography YouTuber I was obsessed with called Peter McKinnon. And
Canadian.
Great shout. Yeah. I love that you know him. Yeah. He was giving away all these incredible tips about photography, and that's where I, in essence, started to learn about it myself. And at no point did he charge for it. It was giving away content, it was entertaining, it was educational, it's all there. But from there, he had like an additional ring of products and services you can get, like presets for editing. He had his own range of merchandise and these different things. And then he also got sponsorships because people then want to sell to his audience. So all my camera equipment is Canon, pretty much primarily because he shoots on Canon, and therefore that was my route into all of this. So there's all these different. It's more of an ecosystem of monetization rather than being this direct transactional model that we used to from the 1900s of it being, here's the thing, do you want it? Yes, no. This is now a sort of a wider ecosystem. You're not quite sure where people jump in, and equally where they're then going to jump off for some sort of purchase.
What would you say to the freelance musicians who are saying, whenever I post on socials, because most people are using their accounts to like, hey, I have a concert coming up, you should come. And then they don't post at all for the next 3-4 months. How would you encourage them to embrace this ecosystem, like you're saying, of creating value, offering value? What does that mean for a typical freelance musician?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I might actually jump back a step as well, just to sort of go through this.
Please.
So I think when it comes to a lot of social media, a lot of the advice, particularly from record labels, is like, Instagram's a really important platform, therefore you should be on Instagram. And we tend not to think about the person who's making the content and their skills and strengths and their preferred communication styles. And we've all seen some poor artist who is absolutely petrified to be on camera, being forced to make a video for Instagram because Decca told them to, and like no one likes to watch it. They don't like to make it. It's never going to convert. So when I work with musicians, I always go into like, how do you prefer to communicate? Do you love writing? Is it long form? Is it short form? Are you great at speaking on camera? Are you great at speaking but you hate being on camera? All these different things. And from there, find the right platform for you and the right type of content for you, rather than trying to like keep forcing yourself into being like square peg round hole type scenario.
Yeah.
So that would be the first part of the ecosystem, is identifying like what works for you as a person, as a human, and then lean into it, regardless of what the world says. And then from there with the ecosystem, I think trying to identify what could be of interest or value to people. And from there, you can also say, what's of interest and of value to me? Like, what do I get excited by? Because we're in a world where you can now connect with those people who find the same things. There's a whole world on YouTube of train spotters. And I imagine historically they would have been quite isolated, and yet that's a niche. So if that's thriving, I imagine there'll be someone who's also interested in your element of Baroque music or period ornamentation, all these different things.
Are you following the train spotters?
I am not, but like I live near a big train station in the UK, and they are there relentlessly.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a world. So that'd be my first point. And I also have a slight hack when it comes to like this temptation to always bang on about your concerts, because understandably you want to sell tickets, but also it's the main thing that's happening. And we've all been there and done like, I am delighted to announce type posts. And we all know they're cringeworthy. When we see other people do them, we cringe, and yet we keep doing them ourselves. My initial hack for it would be to change it to, I'm excited that I will be doing X because Y. It's the same type of post. You're still saying what it is that you're doing, but all of a sudden you get to talk about the reason it's interesting, and that straight away sort of turns it into being valuable. It's like, I'm so excited to be playing this because I did it when I was 6 as my first concert, and it's great to revisit the music, or the music of Bach is really powerful to me, and this is something that's really special that I look out for, that's really interesting, and I've been working on this particular technique. Or it gives you such a range to be passionate. And that's, I think, where social media works really nicely. There's someone who used to be the head of marketing for the Queensland Symphony Orchestra, who was incredible, Matt. And yeah, so he has this like fascination with their musicians. When he talks to them in the pub about music, they're so engaging and delighted and exciting. And yet when it's speaking to like them on stage about music, they go into being really corporate and quite boring. So it's giving you opportunity to be passionate about what it is that you do.
I appreciate you bringing up the multiple platforms. It's something we've been discussing more and more in our community, because there are people who prefer the blogs, and there are people who prefer long form writing, or even just expanding on Instagram captions. I mean, I really appreciate your newsletter that's coming through. Is it monthly, right?
Yes.
I think it's, super fun, really interesting. Lots of different things in there to poke around about. And you're creating connection with your audience. You're creating your relationships. You're nurturing them over time. And you're not doing a ton of talking head content or Instagram stuff. So we are trying, we have people in the membership who are saying, oh yeah, like I prefer the blog. And for us, it's like, yeah, do whatever you like. Deanna has her mom and kids blog. It just needs to be consistent. You need to be consistently building your relationship with your audiences, whatever form that takes. And I think I'm still always going to say, you're talking to people in person, let them see your energy, let them see your face, your tone of voice, your personality, your enthusiasm. And so if you have to talk on stage anyway, just bring that onto the camera. It's going to make people like you that much faster. But I totally appreciate like the people who want to stay behind and writing the words. And I think that's equally as valuable.
Yeah, and I think it's good to be out of your comfort zone. And this will always feel weird and awkward. It's just working out if, one, it's playing to your strengths, or if it's like a step too far.
Right.
The example I use is that I worked with a clarinettist from an orchestra in Mexico coming out of the pandemic, who was late 60s, digital novice, had no social media of any kind personally, let alone professionally. And to her full credit, identified that YouTube was a really big thing for musicians. And so I had this wonderful idea of a project and wanted it to be a YouTube channel. And in our first call, we found out that she hated being on camera. She absolutely was petrified about the idea of video editing and had absolutely no idea how to use a video camera. So we're like, the whole journey would have been this huge uphill struggle. But we found out that she loved writing and didn't hate photography. So we just switched her idea to being a written format that was relying on blogs, because that's where she get her energy from. And if you're energized by something, it's more likely to be sustainable. But equally, you're totally right about this presentation. People love files, smiles and faces. And it's a great way to build relationships with people.
Hey everybody, real quick, I just want to say that if you are struggling to post on Instagram, first of all, you are not alone. Most musicians are sitting there scrolling and not knowing what they would actually post about. Second of all, if that's you, then I have a free gift for you. It is our free guide, 10 golden rules to posting on Instagram as a classical musician. If you follow these 10 rules, you will grow, you will get more followers, you will get more views, you will know what hashtags to use, you will write captions that are interesting, and you will build an audience. And guess what a bigger audience gives you? More concerts. That's right, everybody. So all you need to do is DM us on Instagram at the Fearless Artist Mastermind. Just write golden and we will send you our free guide. Hope you love it and thanks for listening. Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about the mindset? Because I feel like what you're doing a lot with your work is shifting mindsets. You're probably coming across old mindsets. Of course, innovation, obviously it's in the name, but how are some ways that you're helping people reframe things that they've maybe held on to for a long time, whether that's beliefs about like the music should just sell itself, concert formats should not change, why should we have to do anything extra? I mean, I love the idea, the photographer that you mentioned, the YouTube stuff, he's got the merch, he's got the affiliate links, he's got the, you switched to your iPhone because he was recommending the camera. Like, I get that, but I can imagine a lot of people are like, we're here to play music. We're not here to be this like Disneyland for people to come in and pick and choose. Like, how are you presenting this message? And then I'd love for you to share some case studies or results that you see, like transformations.
Yeah, definitely. So I think particularly with musicians, the most powerful thing that I found is that actually highlighting that we always used to be entrepreneurial. That was our default setting. And like going back to Mozart and Paganini and people, like they were entrepreneurs. And we've only had this weird period of specialization for around 100 years in like the 20th century of you are a concert recitalist or an orchestra player and you do one thing and you get a pension and a salary and that's it. And you don't have to do anything else. And that's not who we were, our core. So Mozart was like the epitome of a portfolio musician, being a viola player, a chamber musician, a composer, a conductor, a fundraiser for his projects. He had to like schmooze to get people to be supporters for him. Paganini, I mentioned, when he heard rumors of selling his soul to the devil to become amazing at violin, he started dressing in black to like really sort of amp it up. But my favorite example is a pianist called Paderewski, who was Polish, late 1800s into 1900s, went on to be the first prime minister of independent Poland. And he was like the OG influencer. And so he was deliberately curating his image. He was an early adopter of this weird new technology called photography. So there's lots of moody images of him, which is fascinating. He also was writing quotes about himself and fabricating them, and then giving them out on leaflets outside his concerts to get people to come, being like, Paderewski's amazing, but it's something he just like did himself.
That's amazing.
It's incredible. And like he got
So funny.
loads of hype. So as a result, he then went across to London from Poland and was actively trying to get in gossip columns. And it went so well to the point that he had to have a police entourage on stage to stop women throwing themselves at him.
Wow.
Then from there,
Okay.
Steinway took him all across the United States because he was doing so well. There's articles in like the Boston Globe of like, what would Boston's leaders look like with Paderewski's hair? Because he had this big, giant, like Stephen Isserlis style hair or like Albert Einstein style hair. And from there, yes, he was being active, but he also then generated wealth through other means. So he had his own range of shampoo and cigarettes and sweets. And it became so rich that he helped then finance the foundation of Poland when it became independent. So it's
phenomenal.
He managed
So
to do all
cool.
that through generating attention, building relationship and audience, and these weird sort of left field things. So yeah, that's who we are at our core. So it's not that we're selling out in doing this, we're just returning to our entrepreneurial and I'd almost say creative way of doing things.
Yeah. Being creative means we have multiple skills and strengths and we can work in different areas. I mean, look at you. You're like, you were in music. Now, because of your music, you know how to talk to people who are in this industry. You'll understand how they're thinking. You'll understand why they might not be open to the idea. Do you have a moment where you were in a room and it wasn't hitting and then suddenly there was like a shift or a reframing perspective that came in and people were like, okay, we get it. Like we're willing to try this. And then someone was surprised.
Yeah, I think it depends on the scenario and it's also depends on the individuals. For musicians, I think it is trying to sort of give them permission to feel scared almost, that this is something that's scary, putting yourself out there and going through a period of transition. I always highlight as well that we are living through one of the biggest groundbreaking changing moments of history. The digital and social media and internet ages change how we communicate as a society, and it's democratized information, and that then leads to chaos and periods of huge change. So last time that happened was the printing press, and in Western Europe we saw new ideas of God and wars and all these different things happening. So that's 2 times in the last millennia probably since that we've had these moments. So we are living through something that's quite a scary and difficult time. So that tends to give openness, and that tends to be for individuals and group settings that moment of, oh, it's okay to feel like this and we're all in it together. For organizations, and when especially musicians in organizations, that's a different scenario. There's an element of us and them, which is always exists in every organization, which is always quite fun to try and navigate. And trying to see that it's a shared collective is usually one of those challenging scenarios that's sort of always useful to get to. But that's a broad way of saying that it changes in every single scenario. So I wish I had a magic wand that could light bulb moment people at exactly the same time. But yeah, I think empathy tends to be sort of the common theme for that.
So when you are coming into an organization, one of the first things that you're working on is like increasing visibility and engagement with the audience? Is that what you would say? Or like, is there a specific approach you're using mostly, or are you adapting every single time?
Adapting every single time. And so I'm yet to find 2 organizations that work the same way. So the first thing I do is, in essence, it's more an audit. And that tends not to be like, what have you done that's been like good or bad? It's more like, how does your organization work? What are people's workloads? What's happening, etc. So, for example, I was working with one organization, and they do about 4 or 5 concerts a year, and they rehearse the day before. So getting any musicians to be involved in making content is an absolute nightmare, because if you do that, it's like, great, we've got a day to sell and promote this, which probably isn't going to be of a lead time. So the solution we found from going through was identifying that as being the main challenge. So in essence, we just came up with a template that allowed them to fake it. So in rehearsal 1 for concert 1, they were like capturing content for concert 2 in 2 months' time or 3 months' time, and would just fake it the whole way along, but giving themselves a process and a template to enable them to do it. So that was like a scenario of doing it. So that solution wasn't going to work everywhere. For example, I mentioned Leeds. The way that they succeeded was having 40 years worth of archive footage, although at the time they didn't own all of it. Like, that's not something that is accessible to everyone. Also, a lot of their former participants have gone on to be big names as well, which also helped. Again, that's not suitable for everyone. So it's identifying what is realistic within the resources an organization has.
Yeah. So you're coming in, you're looking at the audit, you're seeing what's available, what pieces you have, but the general strategy is scaling, is visibility. What's like your main angle when you come in?
Usually scaling visibility, but also workflow. I tend to identify, my metrics usually process rather than results. So if we can make it that people are creating content consistently in an audience-focused manner, in a way that we think is quote-unquote good content, then the numbers hopefully take care of themselves at some point. I mentioned that project with Leeds. In particular, our main success was on Facebook, where it took us 4 months to see a difference on Facebook. So after 3 months, if we did like an audit of like, is it working or not? If it was purely on metrics, we would have said no. But if our paradigm for looking at it is like, are we creating content we think is effective? Are we posting regularly? Is it audience focused? Are we getting engagement that's a type of engagement we like? Then it was successful. And then eventually we got to the stupid numbers side. So it's, kind of in the same way of it being music. Like, I'm slightly fascinated that we tend not to use our music brain for our business brain. And that if we were like, have I played all the notes in the right order after my first lesson? No, it's not going to be there. But like, am I practicing in a way that is going to be methodical going forwards and set me with good technique? It's those sort of things. So it's, process driven.
Yeah. So people giving up before they even have a chance to see results.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to share more about audience focused. How do you switch the messaging on like, say, if you were promoting your upcoming cello concert or to an arts organization? I mean, I know you have this big thing right now about like season releases and they're being super boring. So I'm assuming that that's not an audience focused piece of content. So is that maybe something that you would start by saying, let's shift this messaging, and how do you do that? Definitely.
So the cheesy phrase that you can come back to is social media is media that is social. And having that as like an initial mindset, even though it's cheesy as hell, it's a really good way of like, why are we posting this? And if you're just announcing like, here's a list of things that are happening in the next 12 months, it's not necessarily interesting. Even though those products could be interesting, that individual piece of content isn't going to get attention. And if it's not getting attention, then it's not doing service to the thing you're trying to sell or promote or create. So for me, audience focus would be like, are we communicating in a way that sounds natural to other people on the platform is a big one. And then also, is this going to be something that would be of interest to people who we're trying to connect with? And at its core, that's basically it. You can really dive into it on a more deeper level, but that's sort of the initial foundational parts. With it being social as well, that's then more of like an interactive or communicating style. Brands like Duolingo are always fascinating at being like quite sassy on social media. Ryanair, the airline, again, being like very personal, like probably to a level I wouldn't recommend to any other organization.
Right.
But that level of they're able to communicate in a way that feels natural and authentic, and therefore that gives them license and a platform to really experiment and thrive. So, for example, season launches, it'd be like, why am I putting this on? What's the stories behind this, both in the music themselves, but also in the organization or the event or the people participating? And then from there, you've probably got a lot of content you can create, from people's own individual journeys to playing, something about their instrument, the setting it's in, all these things that are exciting. And ultimately, if it is a concert, demonstrating the experience of the consumer. So it's when you watch things like perfume adverts, it's not like a list of things that the perfume smells like. It's the experience of wearing it and the sort of person you become by wearing it. In a similar scenario, like, what would it be if I went to a concert? Would I enjoy it? Am I stood on my own like a lemon, or is it fun and I get to meet friends and like those sort of things? So anything you can do to showcase that. So I think we're now seeing some really good season launches in classical music. So there's definitely a turning of things there. There's still some absolute shockers, but it's great to see some experimentation and community building as part of it.
Do you have one in mind that you recently saw that you were like, okay, they're onto something here?
Minnesota Orchestra 2 years in a row have been phenomenal. They're really good. The most recent one is sort of like around the power of music and why to come. I can't remember the wording exactly, but it's lots of like mini quotes from the audience with like really emotive music in the background. There's a really sweet clip in the middle from a small kid who's talking about like how fun it is for him to come to these concerts and things and how it moves him. And it ends with like a small montage of like the faces of the people who are involved in creating it. So you get that connection and its sense of it being emotive. It feels very, to me, like Christmas adverts of that whole like tearjerker, like, oh my God, this is a special thing that comes around every year. So they're my default go-to. But there's some really interesting ones elsewhere, which are always good fun to have a look at. There's one from Luxembourg Philharmonic, which was a pick and mix concert season launch. And the idea being around that you should try different things from your season subscription. And it was all around food and pick and mix, and that was quite quirky and standing out. So the marketing then suggested how you should then engage with the concert season, which I thought was quite fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, we love to give our musicians examples of people to model after, because a lot of people don't know where to start when they're posting or how to avoid that. Like, here's my upcoming concert that I want you to come to. So I'm hearing you talk a lot about people, the experience people will have when they hear you play, storytelling, what would be interesting for the audience to know about you or to know about the music or about your experience. That's how you can bring people in.
Definitely. Particularly for the individual musicians, that's really achievable to do. You don't need to have some incredible creative idea to like come up with the most like groundbreaking adverts. Minnesota's a great example, but that probably took a lot of creative thought to come up with those ones. But if it is small snippets of people talking after your concerts around what they liked and why it was special and what they enjoyed, or just clips of how audiences engage after the concerts, that's really easy to do. And you just need a phone. And that's something really personal. People always love connecting with individuals and musicians, so I'm sure they'd be very happy to do that. So it's those things for me always seem really quite nice and achievable.
Yeah, that's really smart. I was actually thinking about that this morning with my concert series. But like, there's this one girl who saw a poster one time and then she came to every single concert afterwards, and she's always so excited and she's bringing new friends and they're in the psychology department. And it's a perfect example of there is an audience out there. We just need to find them and connect with them and stay engaged rather than saying classical music's dying, the audience is dying. It's like, well, no, we need to bring the messaging in a way that speaks to a wider audience.
Definitely. There's a famous cellist who lives just north of me called Jamie Walton, and he lives in the North York Moors, which is a really rural area. And he set up a music festival there for people who live in the area in the moors. And the audience there would be the most sort of traditional, easy listening, classic FM type audience of Lark ascending, maybe Beethoven 5, probably nothing more adventurous than Tchaikovsky sort of scenario. And so Jamie puts on this chamber music festival of Stravinsky and Schoenberg and as much like experimental stuff as possible. And because it's a small community, he drives around the villages and tells people and has a direct relationship with them. And so he tells the story of one of the farmers coming up to him at the end of like Stockhausen something. And it's like, I hated every single second of that. I'll see you next week. And because he managed to build a community, it's like, I don't really care if I enjoy the music or not, because I come for this experience and a wider thing. Maybe care is the wrong word, but I'm willing to trust the musician on a journey, and like, it's fine for me not to like stuff and it's fine for me to like stuff. And so that's something I think you can actually replicate online going forwards.
And that comes to a deeper why of why we're doing this. We're educating people about music in general. So of course they're going to have things that they don't like. Just like if they go to a restaurant, they're going to have dishes that they don't like.
Nailed it.
That doesn't mean that they shouldn't come back. It just means that you're widening their experience and you're teaching them what is actually classical music. I mean, that's also our role, is to educate people.
Exactly. And the trying something and not like it is part of one of the positive reasons to go. Like, I'll go and try some sushi and it was weird, but like, I didn't like this one, but this one was cool. And that's the reason I went.
Right. Or bubble tea.
I still don't get that.
No? Okay. Next time we're at a conference, I'll take you. My favorite one is brown sugar. Brown sugar taro.
Like, I keep seeing it everywhere. Like, maybe I need to try that experimenting side. It still confuses me.
Do you get any pushback? Do you come into these organizations and they're like, no, we're not doing this?
Oh, yeah. Always. Or there's I think some more hesitancy to change. Sometimes it is around, I think it might be in the first book, or maybe it's the second book. There's one about survivorship bias. And in essence, it was around an orchestra that said that they were wanting to connect to new audiences. And I said, maybe you should stop wearing tuxedos and be a bit more adventurous. And it was, we thought that, but we asked our existing audience and they said no. So we're not going to. Okay. And also the same organization, we were talking about their online concert platform. And they were like, it was all funded by grants and things. Didn't need to make any money out of it. They were purely doing it for reach, which was their main metric. And they did 10 concerts for free, and then we're going to put a paywall up. And so highlighted the paywall was going to probably stop the reach. And I went, we agree with you, but we think we should charge for music because that's what musicians deserve, so we're going to do it anyway. And so there's still those elements where you get pushed back in various scenarios. And so it's always a journey.
But you also agree musicians should get paid. So it's just them misunderstanding the strategy. Like, you would never be suggesting like money's the point of them bringing you in, is to help grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So those things.
I mean, I don't need to tell you that. I'm just like, wait, what? Like, there was obviously a misunderstanding here.
It's sort of this, like, again, direct transactional thing. And it's again, like with streaming music, it wouldn't be like you have to pay me every single time you listen to my song. And that's kind of what they were trying to replicate for the Netflix style. So it's there's various challenges on that side. So there's always elements of friction. It's never from a place of we don't want to do things. It's always usually from fears, anxieties, challenges, uncertainty, and also if business is difficult, any sort of experimentation is going to be risky, or certainly feel like it's risky.
Right. Okay, you mentioned earlier your magic wand. So just to wrap up, if you had your magic wand, you wave it, what's changing about the music industry?
Oh, that's a good question. I have like 50 answers, but not one.
Multiple answers are allowed.
It will be a culture change to a culture of experimentation, and that trying new things, both as an organization, as individuals, is encouraged and positive. Because I think most of the time it's that we could never change, and anyone who tries something new gets like knocked down instantly. But the idea of if we did, we celebrate all these composers who really push the boundaries historically. So we should probably do the same celebrating of people trying to do that now, both musically and also organizationally and business-wise.
What's the first step to getting there?
Getting me a magic wand, I think. I think maybe on this side it starts with individual musicians or us as a collective, and that if we start to be empathetic towards each other when we see things and supportive, regardless of what they're doing and whether we agree with it or not, that'll start to be a process going forwards.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting, because there's been so much hate on people who are trying new ideas or reformatting concerts or, making different attempts. And then the purists, let's say in quotes, are like, you can't do that. You're ruining our tradition, So yeah, I love that you shared about the original entrepreneur, Mozart. Like how people have done this stuff before. Portfolio careers. I remember I was walking by a statue and it was listing his career, and it said, philosopher, composer, organist, church pastor. It was like, okay, people back then were doing more than one thing.
Yeah.
And now in our current age, it's like, no, you can only play one instrument. And by the way, it has to be one genre.
Yeah.
And by the way, it should only be Baroque music, and you have to be a specialist. And that's the only thing you can do all day, or else you didn't practice enough and you weren't serious, right?
And what do you mean you're teaching? If you're teaching, you've obviously failed. And
Right.
which I always find fascinating, because there's an element where like teaching is like not acceptable until you get to being very, 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 very famous, and then like masterclasses, and like, well, how have they learned to be a teacher if they've not taught through this process? And like, I know from my experience teaching, it made me a much better player than any of my time studying. So it's those bits I'm always fascinated by.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to find a magic wand. We love to finish every episode with an action point. So besides finding a magic wand, do you have one thing that our listeners can do after this very fabulous conversation?
I do. I thought of something halfway through. It's a little bit of a journey to get there, but the action point's very succinct.
Okay.
So I tend to find with musicians that when it comes to social media, we've mentioned about creating content, all these different things. It still feels quite draining to come up with ideas, particularly when you're on concert day. And coming up with social media content is a creative endeavor. So your creative battery gets drained in doing it. And if you're doing that on concert day, you're draining your battery when you need to use your creative battery for your main thing, your performance. And so therefore people are either nervous about posting, they get paralyzed in what to do and post or create or do something. And that's scary. So my takeaway is templates. I love templates. So starting off with a piece of paper of like whatever possible potential thing you could think of as a type of social media post on a concert day. And then next piece of paper, getting rid of the ones you don't like. And from there, you're left with a menu of possibilities as your template. And that could be, make it really granular. So like photo looking out from the stage, photo looking in from the stage, photo outside the concert hall, photo outside the concert hall with me in it. And like as most painfully basic stuff as possible. And then from there, with this list, you have so many options. So when you turn it to a venue, you can go like, these are the 3 things that I want to do today, or like, I can't do this today, therefore I'll do something else. So like if you say, for example, it's like, I must have a photo with the conductor, and the conductor says no, if that's your one idea, you're screwed. But if you can just look at your little menu of ideas and be like, cool, next on the list, and then you can choose the next thing that works for you. So your takeaway would be to make some form of template or menu for your concerts. That means you can focus on the creative thing that you're there to do.
I love that. It's also very helpful to think we're not going to do the posting on the same day that we need to play, because it is a distraction. We don't want to have to be split-minded, but it needs to be done in advance so that you'll have more people coming to your concert, paying attention online. I have my next concert on Saturday, so I'm going to think about this. That's my action point.
Hey.
David, thank you so much. This has been super helpful. I loved chatting. Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so, but if you're interested in more of my ramblings, I have a blog at david-taylor.org, so feel free to come and say hello there. Also, always love chatting, so please come and reach out and say hi as well.
Sounds great. Thanks for your time, and everybody go check out David's blog. It's awesome. I love it. I'm a big fan. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Fearless Artist Podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to share this podcast with a friend. To join our membership or one of our coaching programs, visit our website at thefearlessartistmastermind.com. This episode was produced by Pokey Huang at phMediaStudios in New York City. We're Deanna and Michelle, encouraging you to create your own opportunities and to go after what you want. You have what it takes to build the career of your dreams. Until next time, be fearless.